Hello everyone, my name is Mirna, and on behalf of the Mindalia TV team, we want to welcome you to Mindalia live streaming, where thousands of people around the world gather to see the lectures and interviews organized by Mindalia TV. Today with us, we have Rhoberta Shaler. She is a relationship consultant, mediator, speaker, and author. She provides urgent and ongoing care for relationships in crisis. Rhoberta is the host of two podcasts, and her mission is to help people to stop tolerating abuse. Dr. Rhoberta Shaler focuses on helping the partner, exes, and adult children of the relentlessly difficult people she calls hijackals. She offers strategies for dealing with the constant uncertainty and jaw-dropping behaviors of toxic people. But before going with Rhoberta, we want to remind you that Mindalia TV is a nonprofit organization. Our only mission is to share information that can help raise the level of consciousness around the world, and you can help us. Just by liking this channel, leaving us a positive comment down below, subscribing to our channel, or just sharing this video with someone that you know that can benefit from the content we are sharing today. Also, while we are live streaming, we have the active chat. That is an excellent tool for you to interact. Just please remember the format, the word question in caps, and the question that you want answered. At the end of her talk, Rhoberta will be kindly answering. And also, we want to remind you that Mindalia TV broadcasts every day in Portuguese, Spanish, and English. So if you know the languages, or if you want to share something with us, feel free to visit our pages and channels. We're going to be very happy to hear from you. Without further ado, I am going to be leaving you with Rhoberta. Rhoberta, the screen is yours. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Mirna. I'm excited to be here and to share these ideas with you. And why am I so excited to do that? It's because I have lived with difficult people. I have lived with people who like to make life chaotic, who want to keep you second-guessing yourself and questioning your sanity. And that's what we're going to talk about today, is how to free ourselves from these crazy-making relationships. And you might not even understand that you're in one because it's so familiar to you. It's something that maybe happened to you when you were growing up. Maybe you had people in your life like that. And so you're attractive to and attracted to people like that. And then when you find out they're like that, you're not happy at all. So I want to give you some tools and some insights and some strategies and understanding to recognize what's really going on. So Mirna, let's bring up the PowerPoint and talk about these very important things, because my mission is all about creating emotional savvy, to become wise to the ways of our emotions and to know what to do with them and how to manage with them. So as the PowerPoint comes up, we are going to be looking at how did these toxic relationships come about? What actually are the ingredients of them, and why do they feel the way they do? What can we do about them? So, Myrna, do you have the PowerPoint? I'm not seeing it, so I don't know whether everybody can see it or not. I certainly can't see it on my screen. So I'm just going to go ahead and we'll catch up with the PowerPoint as it comes up.
We almost got it. We're going to be having it in just a second.
Okay, good, because it's much nicer if you can have something visual to refer to as we're speaking about this. And the first slide is just to tell you that my podcast, actually, one of them is called Emotional Savvy, the Relationship Help Show. And it is, as I said, a wise thing to know how to free ourselves from crazy-making relationships. But first of all, we have to recognize we're in them. And we have to recognize that we can do something different. We can make a change. And toxic relationships, they really cause us to question our sanity. You know, is it us? Are we doing something wrong? Could I be more patient? Could I be more loving? Could I be more, less nagging, less demanding? Is it me? And of course, The difficult person is always going to tell you it is you. It's your fault. It's what you're doing that's causing the problem. Everything, in fact, will be your fault, as you'll find out a little later as we go through these points. And so these difficult people that we're engaging with, we try to please them. We try to make them happy. We try to nurture them. We try to take care of them. We try to do something right. And you know what? They're like the Red Queen in the Alice in Wonderland story. They are just unable and unwilling to be pleased no matter what you do. I've had clients who, I think of one woman who she would make sure before her husband came home that everything was as perfect as he liked. She would go to great lengths to make it so he had nothing to complain about. And yet every time he walked into the house, he found something else to be angry about. And that is crazy making. There was no possible way that she could please this person. Maybe you've had a parent like that. And as I'm saying these things to you, you're beginning to realize, oh, my mother and my father was that way, or whomever raised me was that way. And I was left trying to find a way to please them. And maybe you're still trying to find a way to please them and other people in your life because it's become a pattern for you. And toxic relationships breed other toxic relationships. So you can see emotional savvy there. We can go on to the next slide and see that these toxic relationships do cause us to second guess ourselves and question our sanity. And that's a very uncomfortable place to be constantly questioning your own sanity. Because I want to encourage you through this presentation today to be questioning the sanity of other people. So let's talk about this slide. What's the difference between a difficult person and a relentlessly difficult person? Well, you and I are all someone's idea of a difficult person at some times, right? We do something on an off day, or we do something that's even off for us, and somebody finds us difficult. That's an occasional thing. We could usually find out why. There was some stress in our life, there was something going on. So we were difficult, or someone perceived us as difficult. But a relentlessly difficult person in your life is that one person, and usually somebody at home, but sometimes at the office, or one friend, or someone that is that unique person who is always, always difficult. You can't count on them to not be difficult. And so it's a bit like being on a hamster wheel. So if you're thinking that you may have one of these people in your life, I have a program called Seeing the Cycles. And when you go to my website, you'll be able to see that. And so it will help you understand this. So let's move to the next slide so that I can tell you why, when we are the best thing for us to be doing is to create relationships that are based on equality, reciprocity, and mutuality. And we will never find that when we're in relationship with a toxic person. They don't understand the pieces that are required. So I created a term, which is the term you see on your screen, hijackals. And why did I do that? I did that because too many people I found were going to the Google goddess. They were going to the internet and saying, my mother or my partner or my coworker behaves this way. And then they forget that the Google goddess is an index, not a psychological mental health professional. And back comes a psychological clinical diagnosis. When that happens, we tend to separate ourselves from the other person and say, oh, you've got a problem. But we're the one in the relationship with them, so we have a problem. So I wanted a non-clinical term that talked about the patterns, the traits, and cycles that you could see and recognize so that you would know if you were participating in a relationship of that kind. And the definition of a hijackal is on the screen. People who hijack relationships for their own purposes and scavenge them relentlessly for power, status, and control. Do you have someone in mind right now? Did someone pop into mind? I bet they did, because every one of us knows someone like that. You don't have to think very hard to figure that out. You know the relentlessly difficult person in your life. And if you have one and they were in your early life, you're likely to have more. And that is what goes with the territory. That is how we need to start thinking about, whoa, if this is the case, what do I need to do? How do I need to think about it? So let's move to the next slide and talk about what it is to know one. How would you know if you had one? So in the first case, they have to win. You might be talking about where you'd like to go to dinner, and you would think that was a simple conversation of give and take. And one day we go where you want to go, and the other day you go where I want to go, but not for a hijackal. They want to win. They want to be right. They want to be the one that gets their way. They want to be the one that makes you wrong. That's what they do. Their primary thing is to win in the moment. Now, what you need to know about a hijackal is because of this need to win in the moment, if they need to say that black is white in a moment, they will say that. And if 10 minutes later they need to say black is red in order to win, they will say that. And when you point out to them that 10 minutes ago you said black is white, they will say, you don't listen very well, do you? I never said that. All of a sudden, it's your fault. That's a little clue that you're dealing with a hijackal. So important to know. So they always must win. And then what else? They're always blaming other people because they can't be wrong. So you must be wrong, right? So everything will become your fault, whether it's the weather or taxes or summer vacation or whatever it is that's on their mind, it will be your fault. No, you may have had nothing possible to do with it, but it will end up to be your fault. It's horrible. It's nasty. And it completely pushes you down. It demeans you. It degrades you. It dismisses you. It makes you less than. That's not good. Another thing about hijackals is they have out of proportion emotions. So you may think that you are just saying something that is quite quiet, that has no really big possibility of any emotion around it, and all of a sudden they explode. They're angry, out of proportion. That's what hijackals do because they are so delicately balanced. Their egos are so fragile, even while they look like they're the most superior, confident people on the planet. Their egos are so fragile that when you don't do what they want you to do or you question anything about them, they just explode. Beginning to think of somebody? I bet you are. All right, what's another thing? They have a lack of empathy. Now, that's a really big deal because when you go to someone and you say, I'm feeling really poorly, or I'm really upset about this, or I really need to talk about this, the truth is they really don't care because they live in a world that's all about me.com. They don't care about you. Sometimes I say that hijackals don't have love to give you. Hijackals only have uses for you. And that's the truth. If you're not useful to them, even as somebody to blame, they'll move on and they'll find somebody else. They'll always circle back because they need their supply, but they will, in fact, find someone else and move on. And so they have this lack of empathy. And it is the most soul destroying thing because you want to be in a vulnerable relationship. If it's a partnership relationship, a romantic relationship, you want emotional intimacy. You want to someplace it's safe to be vulnerable. They can't give that to you. And even if they could, they wouldn't because they have a lack of empathy. They can't put themselves in your shoes and they don't care to. Very important. And then what's another? Well, no matter what happens, they're not going to take responsibility for it, and they're not going to be accountable for whatever they did. That's a problem. What do we do with those people at work? Recently, I was giving a seminar at the California HR conference, and I was talking about these toxic, difficult people in the workplace, and someone put up their hand and said, what happens to them? I said, brace yourself, because the truth is they get promoted. Why? Whether it's a lateral or a vertical promotion, it's get this person out of my team or out of my department, and I'll do whatever it takes to not have to deal with them. And then slowly, they're a bit like a reverse pinball machine. They don't get put out and come down from the top. They start out and they go up from the bottom. And the last thing I want to talk to you, although there are many other ways to know what's a hijackal, is that last one, because they create chaos. They like ambiguity and they create chaos. They want you to not know for sure. They want you to be uncertain. They want you to wonder if you've made a solid commitment or if they've made a solid commitment, and they never do. They want you to be in that because then they have control over you. They've got you in a place where your emotions are uncertain. And that's what they love. So if any of those things are beginning to sound like a pattern to you, you may very well be with a hijackal. So let's move to the next slide. Who could that hijackal be? Well, obviously, it could be anybody in the whole world. But where are the basic places you're going to find them? It could have been your parent. It may be your partner. And in my groups and people that I work with, I've had people who have been married to people for over 30 years, and finally they learn that this is what has been bothering. This is what has been destroying their soul. And this is the first time they've learned about it. They've thought about it. They've spent all that time trying to make it work. It may be a coworker, often the case. Very difficult to fire. That's why they get promoted. It may be a friend. And if you had a hijackal parent, it's likely that they are all four of those things because that's the way you learn to roll in life. And that's very, very difficult. It's very upsetting. And it requires a lot from you to be able to say, I've kind of surrounded myself with these people. And I've done that because as a small child, I learned that I have to keep them happy. I have to keep them pleased and appeased. And so I've learned to do that, and I put myself a long distance second, and I take care of other people. I try to make them happy. And in the doing of that, I become a people pleaser, maybe a little codependent, and maybe I've even gone so far as to make myself into a doormat that people just walk over in the effort to be that good person that takes care of people, that cares about people, and that wants to make things good and right. And these are very important things to do. Don't beat yourself up about this. It came about organically, it came naturally. You had nothing to do with learning all of this. But now that you hear this, you have everything to do with changing it. And it can be changed. It's a slow journey, but it can be changed. So let's move on to the next slide. We need to learn some things, some strategies, some skills, have some insights, because we need to know what it takes to stop the crazy making and save your sanity. First of all, when people ask me, what should I do? Let's say that they're in a marriage that they realize they're with a hijackal. And there are an equal number of male and female hijackals. So I will use he and she interchangeably. And so you realize you're in that relationship, and someone comes and says to me, should I leave? I always say this. Unless there's physical or sexual abuse that's going on, no, stay and do your own work first. First of all, look deeply into who you are, how you operate in the world, what you tolerate in relationships, why that might be. You probably need to work with someone who can ask you great questions and look at that. And then look at what you want in life. Be bold. Look at what kind of loving relationship do you want? What kind of emotional intimacy do you want? What kind of respect and honesty and trust and reliability do you want? This is your own work. You figuring out at this moment in my life, what do I want? How do I want to be treated? Completely aside from how you may be being treated right now, let's look at the future. Let's look at your vision for your life. And then in you doing your own work, you need to learn what you deserve. You need to really come to a place where you believe that you deserve to be loved and cherished and honored and accepted and acknowledged and heard and seen and appreciated. And that's not going to happen if you have a hijackal in your life. So that's why you need to do your own work first and then get skills and strategies. Because as you get skills and strategies, then you will begin to understand that I have some power. I can do something. And you could try them out in the relationship. You could practice them. And as you practice them, you can calibrate what is changing in the relationship or not changing in the relationship. And that will help you see whether or not there's hope to stay. And further about that calibration, you are learning these skills and getting insights about yourself. You will learn to set good boundaries, healthy boundaries. And boundaries are healthy and they have to be non negotiable. So they have to be very, very well thought through. So important. So when you do your own work first, all of that occurs. And then you can improve your communication skills. Then you will know what you are dealing with. And the great thing about that is you won't leave the relationship in a disempowered way. You will leave the relationship, if you do leave the relationship, in an empowered way. You will have skills, you will have insights, you'll feel better about yourself, you will know what your next best steps are. And that's great. That's exactly what you want. So do your own work first in the relationship, unless there is physical or sexual abuse going on. And that's how we start to stop the crazy making and save our sanity. Let's look at what we can do on the next slide, because these are very important pieces. We need to be able to know what our next best steps are and what's possible in that situation. And one of the things that we can do, top of the list here on the new slide, is to begin to recognize the traits and patterns and cycles that I'm talking about. They're actually happening. Myrna, can we move the slide forward? They're actually happening. You can't avoid seeing them, because once you've seen even a little of what I'm speaking about, you will begin to see it always happens. It's the next slide from this one. And as you begin to recognize that those patterns and traits are cyclical, they're always happening. It's the next slide, please, Myrna. They're always happening and repeating. Then you begin to see, this is unacceptable to me. So the first thing is to recognize the patterns, traits, and cycles. The second thing is to realize your investment in it, that you have come to a place of realizing that you are putting up with this. You are accepting this. It's not making you happy. It's causing you to make yourself into a pretzel, but you are accepting it. So you have invested in this. You have an investment, and it's time to change your investment, because you're engaging with it and you need to be doing something different. So, under the slide of what you need to do here, you see that first you recognize, then you realize your investment in it and your engagement with it. And you have to come clean and honest with yourself. Yes, I'm doing that. And then you move on to learn how to respond effectively. Now, that's where all the work comes, because as you begin to realize how you have participated in this relationship and how it was all right with you to participate in it, because organically you learned that these things were appropriate for you. As you did that, then it became clear that you wanted to make a change. So you realize your investment. And now you need to get skills and strategies and insights to respond effectively. Because what do? You can't respond in the old way. That didn't work. That kept you in the cycle. So we need to learn new ways to respond. We need to learn how to do things like give what I call the personal weather report from one of my books, to be able to communicate in a way that says, I can talk about me, and you can accept it or not accept it. And if we go back and think about a hijackal having almost no empathy, and maybe none at all, they're not interested in you. So when you begin to respond effectively and you begin to say what's important to you and you clarify that and you do that work within yourself and you can have those things to say, you learn to be able to calibrate whether or not there is any wiggle room within them to change. And in most cases, there isn't. It will seem that way because they will, if they think you're going to leave them in a romantic relationship, they will turn back into the person who wooed you in the first place and made you want them. for a very brief period of time because they felt threatened, but they won't change at their core. They will not change. And then you need to really respect the limitations. You need to have done that work and realize not changing, not getting the response I want, not getting a healthy response, no interest in me, no interest in changing the dynamic of our relationship, no willingness to accept responsibility for anything. And that's what I mean by respect the limitations. And then we move on to the last 2 points in this slide, and I don't know why they're not showing up, but I'll give them to you. Then the next thing is you have to know what to refuse. You have to refuse to tolerate these behaviors. There it is. You have to refuse to accept being treated that way. Refuse to have someone else define your reality, because a hijackal wants to define your reality. You know that they like to tell you what you should think, and they'll even tell you what you do think. They'll tell you what you feel. They'll tell you what you need. They'll tell you what you want. And you're left with your head spinning like, no, I don't want those things. I don't feel that. I don't need that, you know? And yet they want to define your reality, and you have to start refusing that. And then the next step on the last slide is that then you need good skills, good guidance, good help to recover. You have to go back and recover a sense of yourself that maybe you didn't have initially. It might not have been present for you. And so that's a lot of work. And I realize it is a lot of work. But you're worth it. You are absolutely worth it. And in order to really engage in that way, to recognize that you're worth it, that's where all your own work comes from. Because up until you hear this, up until it makes sense to you, up until you realize that have I been allowing myself to be depressed and repressed? Have I allowed someone to define my reality? Have I allowed someone to tell me who I am and what I want? Am I living in fear of somebody's anger all the time? Am I walking on eggshells, afraid to put my foot in the wrong place and get a bad reaction? So I'm living with stress, chronic stress. And we know the destruction on the body as well as on the emotions of living with chronic stress. It's very destructive, particularly to our immune systems. So there's a very good reason for saying no, for refusing to allow this behavior any further. And yes, you can have compassion for a hijackal. They didn't choose to become like that. They're not even choosing it right now, but they don't know another way and they're not interested in learning it. So you can, in fact, have compassion for the fact that they did not have the life that would have given them another set to work with. However, do not confuse the compassion with enabling or condoning these destructive behaviors. That's your job. No longer to condone or enable the destructive behaviors, the disempowering behaviors, the dismissive, demeaning, degrading behaviors. No, you've got to say no to that. Absolutely a big no to that if you want to recover. And I want you to know too that recovery is going to be slow. I'd like to tell you differently, but it isn't, because you have so much to create that has to be new. And so bit by bit, you uncover who you really are, how you really want to be, and you allow that person to emerge in the world. You've been in stress for a long time if you've been with a hijackal. And to emerge from that takes time and it takes help. So, what do you need to do? Let's look at the next slide. Number one thing, absolutely number one thing you do is to make yourself your priority. Now, I know that's a foreign idea to many people who have been with a hijackal because the other person was the most important person and they were demanding to be the most important person. You know that, right? So, as they're demanding to be most important, that means that you become secondary. You are no longer a priority to them. And perhaps from your background, you're not a priority to you. So, the first thing is to make yourself your number one priority. And no, that's not selfish. No, that's not self centered. No, that's not negative. I'm not saying you make yourself superior to others or better than others or think of yourself as being better to others. I think of yourself as becoming equal to others and having the same rights as others to express yourself, to be fully living and expressing your values and your vision for your life, your beliefs and your challenges, purposes, and goals in life. You have that right. You deserve to take up space and draw breath. And you have to treat yourself as though you do. And a hijackal won't treat you that way. So make yourself the number one priority. And then get help and support. You know, as you're sitting there thinking, wow, this really did happen to me. I really am in such a place. Then you have to start treating yourself as though you matter, because you do. You matter. You know, let me give you this idea. Do you know that one egg and millions of sperm swimming toward it did not make a good odds that you would be alive? But you're here, and therefore you matter. And it's important for you to treat yourself as though you do. You don't matter more than others. You matter equally to others, and you need to treat yourself in that way. It's so important to recognize that if you are in a relationship with a toxic, difficult person, a relentlessly difficult person, maybe even a disturbing person, and you are allowing yourself to run after them, to try and please them, to try and make them happy, to think you could love them enough that they would feel comfortable and change, please know that's not going to be the place. That's not going to be the case. It's not going to happen. Yes, they can make some movement. You'll find that out because you are going to do your own work before you walk out of the relationship. So you will find out if they have some wiggle room, some willingness to change, some openness to ideas. You'll find that out. But if you find out that they're closed, that they like it the way it is, and they have no intention of allowing you to grow or to expand, then you will figure that out and know what your best next steps are. But remember, and say this to yourself every day, I matter. I deserve to be loved. I deserve to be respected. I deserve to be trusted. And I deserve to be in an honest, open, rich, and emotionally intimate relationship. And that is what it means to be loved. So, just a few things about me on this last slide, Myrna, and then we'll open it to questions. This is who I am, and this is what I do. So I'm always happy to speak with you. I work through video conferencing so we can talk wherever you are in the world. So let's see, Myrna, if we have questions from our folks. I'm sure that we've stirred up a lot of ideas here, a lot of things that maybe you didn't really want to notice. And as you notice them today, you can't avoid seeing them because of the things we've spoken of.
Thank you so much, Roberta, for such valuable information. It is definitely helpful. And we're gonna start with the Q&A. Before going there, we want to remind our audience that Mindalia TV is a nonprofit organization, that our only mission is to share information that can help raise the level of consciousness around the world, and that you can help us just by liking this channel, leaving us a positive comment down below, subscribing, and even sharing this with someone that you know that is gonna be, taking a good benefit of what we shared here today, which is definitely important. You're going to be hearing my voice now, Roberta. You won't be seeing me, but I'm going to be right here, okay?
Okay.
And the first question that we have, it says, do they, and I guess that they mean the hijackals, do they easily realize that they are doing that, or they are not aware of the fact that?
Yes, great question, because no, this is the only way they know. Now, this may come as a surprise, but these people are actually very, very fragile. And they give off the air of arrogance and superiority and confidence and demanding and commanding. But inside, they are actually small and fearful. So the only way that they have learned to manage in the world is to have the attributes that they have. And they honestly need to believe there is nothing wrong with them, that they are absolutely perfect and above question. So, no. Now, there's a tiny percent of the people in this category, and most of these people have the tendencies of personality disorders. There's a tiny percent of them that are very conniving and wanting to hurt. They do it very much on purpose, not just because they don't have empathy, but because they actually want to. But that's a very small number. So, no, they don't sit up at night and think how they can make your life miserable. They're just doing who they are and what they know to do. And they really don't care about their effect on other humans. They can't afford to care about that because of that need that they have to stay in control and power all the time.
Well, thank you for that answer. Next question. Do they really love know how to show it? It's very similar to the one before.
Well, you broke up. Did they really know what?
Sorry about that. Do they really love their partner and they just don't know how to show it?
Good question again. Their definition of love is very different than probably their partner's definition of love. Love to them is a very scary thing, and they can mimic love. They can mimic empathy. But actually being able to love, yes, in their own way, they do, but it doesn't feel or look like what you would hope that it does. So the capacity to love has been very diminished by their upbringing and the traumas that they have been part of in their lives. So I often say that unfortunately, hijackals don't have love to give you. They have uses for you. And that's a truth that unfortunately we have to recognize.
Thank you so much, Rhoberta. Next question. It's how to help a friend realize that she's with a hijackal.
So difficult because they're very protective of the hijackal, right? So when you want to say, there's something wrong, something's amiss, you're always being put down, you're always being told what to do, you're always being prevented from coming out and doing things with me. Don't you think that's a bit odd? A person who is with a hijackal will defend the hijackal. So it's a great question. So what can you do? Talk about yourself and speak about healthy things. You say, well, for me, I couldn't be with somebody who wanted to control my every behavior. I would walk away from that. That would be very difficult. So, in that way, you're just talking about yourself. You're not suggesting there's something wrong with what she's doing, but you can say, for me, that wouldn't work, and here's why. Or you can say, wow, you just described all that to me. Does that make you feel loved? You can ask a question like that that has no judgment in it. It's just curiosity. Does that make you feel loved? And then perhaps your friend will talk to you and say, well, no, but, and then you'll begin to have a conversation. So it's an invitation. I have so many people that have said to me, if somebody had told me that this was what was going on, and I know they tried, and I didn't believe them. And until that person actually wakes up for themselves and sees that, they will not get it. But don't let that stop you from using yourself as an example, what your values would be in behavior. You might say, it's really important to me to be treated with respect. How is that for you? And engage them in a conversation of that kind. Or I will only be in a relationship where I can be honest. And even if I don't like what I'm hearing, that I can engage in a good give and take in conversation so we can figure things out. How does that work in your relationship? These are honest, genuine questions, not meaning to manipulate them into believing what you're saying, but actually curious questions, leaning into the person and and finding out what they're really thinking. So in doing that, there is no threat to them. They are not being judged. They're not being blamed or shamed, but you're using yourself as an example, giving insights about the way you do relationship, and they can then have a think about that. And that's one of the ways that you can really be helpful to your friend.
Thank you so much, Rhoberta. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, perfect. The next question says, can you tell us about early signs or red flags at the beginning of a relationship? How can we spot a hijackal?
Okay, well, the first thing, take off your rose-colored glasses, because it's really difficult to see red flags when you're wearing rose-colored glasses. So get real about what you want in a relationship instead of putting on your rose-colored glasses and wondering, does this person like me? No, it's a job interview. Start looking at who that person is and take off those rose-colored glasses so you can see the red flags. Now, what are they? Well, slowly, a hijackal, first of all, they're a chameleon. They will be the best thing you've ever had, the best person who's ever come into your life. You will believe that they're your soulmate, that you've died and gone to heaven because you found that person who knows you, sees you, really gets you. That's all part of their charm because they're a chameleon. They can do that. But they want to do it quickly in the shortest period of time. So one big red flag is somebody will say really early in the relationship, I know we're going to get married. And they're beginning to plant that seed, or they're going to say, I've waited for you all my life. Just be wary of that. Yes, you might meet the perfect person and it may not be a hijackal and they may say that. But if you find somebody saying that, look at the speed at which they're willing to accelerate the emotional intimacy in the relationship. That's a big red flag, right? It's not about the physical intimacy, it's the emotional intimacy. They're trying to get it over with because they don't like emotional intimacy. So they believe that if they can get you to move in with them, marry them, or you become pregnant in the relationship, whether you're male or female, doesn't matter, that there's pregnancy that occurs, they've got you. They've captured you. So there's a red flag, going too fast, saying things that are too emotionally intimate too soon, asking to make plans to move in or move to the next level too quickly. When people ask me about that, and they don't ask me as often as I wish they did, how long should you wait to marry somebody or to get engaged? Particularly, I'd like you to wait to get engaged. One trip around the sun. Wait a whole year and watch them. Watch them. How do they behave in stress? How do they behave in happiness? How do they behave when you have a problem? How do they behave when they have a problem? Watch them. Just watch them. And this is what you are learning about them to see, can we have a whole and healthy relationship? And if you're with a hijackal, there will be cracks really soon. The red flags will begin to show. They'll put you down and then they'll quickly apologize for it. And then they'll put you down again. And things will begin to show those cracks. So you have to be aware. So whip off the rose-colored glasses. Watch for them trying to go too quickly. If they seem too good to be true, believe them. They probably are. And just wait and watch them. Watch them and watch them and watch how they relate to the people around them. Do they have lots of friends or do they use people? Do they demand loyalty and then they're loyal to no one? Watch for that. Watch them very, very carefully, and you will begin to see how it breaks down. If there is a hijackal in there, it will break down. There'll be a little crack here and a little crack there, and then there'll be an apology, and then the behavior will happen again, and then there won't be an apology, and then you'll be dismissed, and you'll be devalued, and then finally you'll be discarded, and you don't want to get into that whole cycle and paradigm. So that's what you have to do. No rose-colored glasses. Know what you're looking for and go for that. Do not be all about how do you like me. You be like, this is a job interview and I need to like you. And I know that's a different paradigm shift for many, many people. But know that, because even if you're desperate to be in a relationship, you're longing to be loved, you don't want to be loved by somebody who has no love to give you. So take your time and watch them.
Thank you so much for that answer. And the next question, it says, At the moment that they are angry, that they are like throwing a tantrum, what should the victim do?
Another good question. What a great audience we have. When they're throwing a tantrum, know that it has nothing to do with you. At that moment, you need to become Teflon. And what they're counting on is that you're going to be Velcro. You're going to take it on. You're going to be, oh, I'm making you angry. Oh, I'm so sorry I did that. Oh, I shouldn't have done that. Silly me. I'm a bad person. That's what they're hoping for, because that's how they're going to get power and control over you. When they get angry, you just watch. It's all about them. They're doing their thing. You know, they're going to go through whatever they're going through. You be Teflon. You just let it slide off you and go, So you observe their behavior, but you don't respond to their behavior. You just observe it. Well, that's interesting. You're behaving like a 2-year-old. Oh my goodness, listen to that language. You say I did that. I didn't do that, but listen to the story you're telling. And you just become an observer, and you become Teflon. Don't engage, don't try to better them, and don't try to straighten them out. They're not going to listen to you. They don't care about the truth. They care about power over you, controlling you, being right. Remember, go back to what I said about the paramount thing that a hijackal needs to do: win in the moment. When they're angry, they really need to win. So you just fall silent, be neutral, don't be emotional, be Teflon. Observe, don't respond.
Thank you so much. And the next question that we have here, it says, are there groups or communities that can support someone that is going through recovery?
Oh, absolutely. I have them. I work with people all over the world. I have Facebook groups. I have group coaching programs. Yes, there's lots and lots of help for you. And you can do it in situations that are virtual. All my things are by video conferencing. So wherever you are in the world, you don't have to go out of your house and let the rest of the world know you're getting that kind of help. You can do it right on your computer. And yes, there is lots and lots of help. But you have to search for it a little bit. But it's worth doing. And if you need help, always feel free to contact me, or go to my Facebook page, or do whatever, and just ask me and I'll point you in the right direction.
Thank you so much. And the next question, it says, in a conflicted, toxic relationship, how do we differ or see the difference between a hijackal and the other person being just overly sensitive?
Oh, well, let me talk about a few things about hijackals. There are two kinds generally, although there's lots of things in between. But we have covert hijackals and overt hijackals. The covert hijackals are going to be those sensitive people who say, oh, I can't ever do anything right. And, oh, you make me feel so badly. And they play on your guilt. They play on that side of you. And so you have to know that that's just the flip side of the hijackal who's overt and demanding and commanding. These are people who are passive and they want to get their needs met indirectly, and they want you to feel bad for them. They want you to feel like they're the victim and you're the villain. They want to play on your sensibilities and get you to take care of them, but really they're playing you like a harp, really, and you have to notice that. So whether the person is being overt and demanding and arrogant and on top of it, or they're being covert and they're always feeling badly and never feeling taken care of, and you don't take care of me and you don't care about me and all of that, they're the same thing. So they may be seen as overly sensitive, but what you have to learn to do is to calibrate. Are you treating them poorly? If you are, admit it. Just say, oh, well, I could do better with that, and change your behavior. But you'll watch, they won't change theirs. And that's when you know you're with a covert hijackal.
Whoa, that's very interesting. Thank you. For the next question, what we have is, why is it that some people break up with a hijackal and they find another one identical or worse?
Yes, I've had people who have been in a relationship with 6 or 7 hijackals before they came to see me. And there's two things about that I want to say. Always, if you're going for help, always go to somebody who understands these behaviors. And you need to interview a therapist or a mental health professional to find out if they have that in their background, if they really understand this. I was raised in a home full of hijackals. It was crazy making. I happened to be a smart kid, and I looked at them and went, this is crazy. I don't believe what they're saying to each other. I don't believe how they behave. This doesn't make any sense at all. But I was a kid. So it all came in and became part of me. One of the things about hijackals that I didn't mention and we need to note is that if you have one at home and you say to somebody, they treat me really badly, and the other person says, oh, that person would never behave like that, it's because of this. A hijackal paints a public picture of perfection. But at home, they create a private place of pain. So they will be this one person out in public, and then at home, they will be the hijackal in the worst way possible. So it's very important to recognize that, so that then when you go for help, you have to go to somebody who knows about this, not just book learning, but knows viscerally in their heart and in their body what this is and what to look for. Because many times I've had clients tell me that they've gone with their partner to get some help and hoping that somebody would see the patterns and help them. And the hijackal manipulated, exploited, and seduced the professional into believing their side of things. And then the partner was rewounded by two people instead of one. So that's very important. So now to answer your question, why do you keep repeating the pattern? Because you didn't do your own work. Until you actually wake up and say, oh, there's a pattern here. I keep getting the same person in my life and I keep disliking it as much as always. There must be something that I need to do differently. And when you wake up at that moment, and there's no right or wrong or good or bad about when you wake up, you just wake up if you wake up. And then you say, no, this isn't going to happen again. I'm not going to go through that. That's when you do your own work. And give yourself a good year to do that work. No other people coming and darkening your doorstep. Do that and do your work so that we can eradicate that. I've worked with many people that we needed to take it apart. Why are these people attractive to you? Why are those people attracted to you? And let's change that. Let's change what's going on within you so that you are no longer on their radar. They'll still darken your doorstep, but you'll go, no, thank you. You will recognize them right away. And you will say, oh, no, I deserve to be treated in these ways. And I know this isn't going to happen. So the answer is, if you keep attracting them, it's because of something in your past that you're not recognizing. You need new patterns and you need help. And know that you're worth it, that you matter, to get the help. I was working with somebody yesterday and she was telling me that, she was happy to do whatever it took to never repeat that experience. And she was just telling me about her experience. It wasn't a client. And she said, I had to put it all on a credit card, but I would absolutely advise that if that's what you have to do, you do it, because make it a priority to get help so you do not repeat the experience. Because until you get the help and have the insights and the new skills and all the things that you need to not go down that path again, you'll go down it again.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. The next question says, how do they find their prey? Is there a feature that they look for?
Yes, there certainly is. I think hijackals have radar. They know exactly what they're looking for. They hone in on vulnerability, on codependence, on people pleasing, and on just plain nice, good hearted people that they think they can manipulate. And it's almost like they're pheromones to hijackals. It's almost like they can smell that about you and they are attracted to you and they come running to you. So yes, they will figure that out. But there is another kind of hijackal. And that kind of hijackal likes a challenge. So they will go after a very successful, high-level person and look for the vulnerabilities and then get them in their relationship and then start undermining them with their vulnerabilities to see if they can drag them down and ruin them. So it's very, very important that you know all these things, because you don't want to have that happening. You do not want to be attractive to a hijackal. And you do need to do your own work to make sure that there are no signs that you're flying that say, hey, pick me. No.
Thank you. Next question, it says, um, is the hijackal basically a sociopath or like a mild psychopath, like a person with mild psychopathic features?
Hijackals are going to be people with what we call tendencies or full-blown cluster B personality disorders. So that's going to be an antisocial, which is a psychopath or a sociopath. It's going to be a histrionic, that's the drama kings and queens of the world, allaboutme.com. It's going to be the narcissists, and it's going to be the borderlines. But something to say about the borderlines have empathy and they can change. They're the ones who are most willing to engage in getting help. So not all hijackals are of the same degree or the same degree of empathy or the same lack of willingness to change. So a person who has borderline personality disorder or tendencies in that direction will actually and honestly be able to say, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to hurt you. And they honestly mean it, but they'll go and do it again. And then they'll say, I'm so sorry, I know what I did, but they couldn't help themselves, but they will get help and they will change. And it takes a long time, but they can. But the others, no, they're not going to change. They will appear to change, as I said earlier, because that will cause you to be what we call hoovered back in. They'll just come by and love bomb you and give you everything that they gave you at the beginning of the relationship and more to try and draw you back in, hoover you in like a vacuum cleaner. And then you will do it. I'll give you an example. I had a client that I've been working with for a while. She was leaving an abusive man, and she had a big mark across her face when she came in. And I said, what happened? She said, he hit me with a hairbrush. And I said, oh, well, let's talk about that. She said, but I know he loves me. I said, how do you know he loves you? She said, well, 3 weeks ago, he brought me flowers and told me he loved me. So I walked her over to my mirror and I said, what's this, a love tap? She truly wanted to believe that 3 weeks ago, because he told her she loved her, she preferred to believe that than to believe the evidence in reality that he didn't like her and he was willing to hit and destroy her. So it's very, very important to see these things and understand that if you are with a person who has these traits, these cluster B personality traits, narcissists, borderlines, histrionics, and antisocials, that you don't want to be engaged with that because it's not going to go anywhere good and it's not going to change much. And you have to come to that realization on your own terms. And you need help to do that because you don't want to believe that. I know that.
Thank you so much. The last question for today. What happens with the hijackal when their partner doesn't engage in their game?
Well, let me tell you this horribly bad news about hijackals. They usually have supply waiting in the wings. They usually have other potential partners that they've already got on their radar. And if they're not already engaging with those partners or flirting with those partners or having full-blown affairs with them, they've been grooming them to have one. So when you reject a hijackal, they will go running to somebody else to show, I don't need you. I don't care about you. Look. And then they will be their charming, love-bombing self, their chameleon self, being their gift to this person, their soulmate, and the whole cycle will repeat again. And that's where it gets tough because you recognize their patterns. You say, I don't want this anymore. And then you watch them and they're happy to tell you. They'll text you. They'll email you. Oh, well, this person thinks I'm wonderful. This person, and they're giving that other person the earth and they wouldn't give you a thing. And then you feel terribly bad because then you start to say, was it me? Was it me? No, this is the game. They will just go and get more supply. And when that supply runs out and they're sitting in a quiet moment and they don't have anyone to adore them, they'll come running back to you and hope that they can get you back. Say no.
Oh, thank you. And as we came to the end of our Q&A section, we want to thank you in the name of the Mindalia TV team, Rhoberta, for sharing this information with us. It is amazingly important. It is definitely life-saving. And to our audience, we also want to thank you for joining us today. Before leaving, we want to ask you, Rhoberta, where can our audience find you?
Go to my website for help. For help.com. FOR relationship HELP.com. Or go to my YouTube channel, which has the same name, For Relationship Help. I have 2 podcasts, Emotional Savvy, The Relationship Help Show, and for those people in relationship with hijackals, Save Your Sanity, Help for Handling Hijackals. I also have a television show on the Binge TV network, which is on Roku, TiVo, Apple TV, Smart TV, all of those things. So check your device and find Binge Network and then look for the Emotional Savvy Show.
Thank you again. To our audience, thank you one more time. Remind you that we are a nonprofit organization. Our only mission is just to share information that can help raise the level of consciousness around the world. And Rhoberta, we want you to give a word to our audience before we leave.
I just want you to remember that get up every morning, look yourself deeply in the eyes in the mirror, hold your gaze and say, I love you, I accept you, and I approve of you just the way you are, and you matter. And believe it and behave from it.
Thank you so much. And you are welcome. Thank you everyone for joining us today. And until the next time, have a good day.